So I want to transition now and talk about something that I get a lot of questions about, but it's not even necessarily within kind of my domain or my lane. I would say it is to one extent, but it's way more in your lane, Patrick, because you're the guy who is the expert on this area. And it's this idea of how long can you hold your breath and CO2 tolerance, and then something called the Bolt score. So a lot of people have heard me talk about the Bolt score. A lot of people have heard you, Patrick, talk about the Bolt score, obviously. So I wanted to just take a few minutes here to kind of unpack, like, what is the Bolt score? We talked about this and highlighted it a little bit on the last Q&A, but I'd love to take more of a deep dive. So number one, what is the Bolt score? Like, how do we assess it? Like, what do we make of our scores? And then, like, how do we improve it? So Patrick, let's start first with, like, what is the Bolt score?
Yeah, I think it's always a good place to start. And BOLT stands for Body Oxygen Level Test. It was just, a name that we put together to kind of get the information across. It's very simply, when you're sitting down for a few minutes and get out a timer, a watch, or your phone, whatever you have, and take a normal breath in through your nose and out through your nose, and pinch your nose and time it in seconds. How long does it take until you feel the first definite desire to breathe, or the first involuntary movement of your breathing muscles? And when you let go, your breathing should be pretty normal. So it's not the maximum length of your breath hold time. Again, it's a comfortable breath hold time taken after an exhalation.
And Patrick, too, that's a great clarification, because a lot of people ask me, so it's like, they'll say, like, how far do I push this? Because, I guess there is going to be a level of subjectivity here. It could be objective in that you do feel like a muscular contraction, but I know you always say it's that, again, that first kind of urge to take a breath. And so, like, is there, like, wiggle room here? Like, would you say that it is a bit subjective, or, like, are there objective things that we should look for?
Yeah, there's a small kind of variance of about 2 seconds normally. So that would be between, say, for example, the first definite stress to breathe and the first involuntary movement of your breathing muscles. So you can imagine that as you hold your breath, the gas carbon dioxide, which is coming from the tissues into the blood, carbon dioxide is building up in the blood, because when you hold your breath, carbon dioxide is not going to leave the body through the lungs. And as carbon dioxide increases, blood pH drops. And the brain reacts by sending a stimulus to breathe, because we breathe to breathe out carbon dioxide. So the primary stimulus to breathe is to get rid of carbon dioxide. And it's not just carbon dioxide as a waste gas, but the body is very sensitive to the accumulation of carbon dioxide. So when we talk about a CO2 tolerance test, your length of your breath hold time provides you a good indicator of how sensitive are you to the buildup of carbon dioxide. And I wouldn't, I suppose, Jay, it's like everything else. People with perfectionist tendencies are more prone to chronic hyperventilation.
Mm-hmm.
And then they bring that same perfectionism into breathing. And the only thing about breathing is that it doesn't always go in a straight direction, a straight line.
Right.
And there's always little ups and downs. And even interpreting your Bolt score, like I would say to people, do it within reason. And I suppose the main thing is that you're noticing that when you're feeling pretty poor and fatigued, and if you're overly breathless during physical exercise, and if you're stressed, your Bolt score will typically be reduced. And by working to change your breathing patterns and to reduce your chemosensitivity to carbon dioxide, and to breathe more efficiently in and out through the nose, and breathe light and breathe slow and low, your Bolt score improves. And a cutoff point is about 25 seconds. So what this means is that when you're sitting down now measuring your Bolt score, and you're taking the normal breath in and out and pinching your nose and holding your breath, you should be able to hold your breath for 25 seconds plus before you feel the first definite desire to breathe, or before you feel the first involuntary movement of the diaphragm. So your diaphragm breathing muscle, which is located just at the base of your ribs, at some point when the brain tells you to breathe, the brain sends a message via the phrenic nerve to the diaphragm, and the diaphragm breathing muscle moves downwards, so you'll feel a contraction. So that's where you're looking for, and when you resume breathing, it should be fairly normal. And there's also a relationship between, of course, the length of time of your breath hold time, your chemosensitivity to carbon dioxide, is also related to the sensitivity of the baroreflex, which is interesting. So when people are talking about, and I don't want to go down because this is going to be your field, that there's a connection there. And I think if we look at people who are overly stressed, their breathing is faster, their breathing is harder, their breathing is upper chest, they may have irregular breathing. These people will have a lower Bolt score. So when you have a low Bolt score, it typically tells you that your breathing is not up to par. There's room for improvement. But the one thing about the Bolt score is it kind of tells you where you're at, because I can imagine the number of people, say, going into a yoga studio, and the yoga teacher is bringing them through different breathing exercises. And some people will do the breathing exercises pretty easy, and some people will really be struggling. They're overly breathless. They feel air hunger. And that person may not realize that the reason that they're feeling overly breathless is because their everyday breathing is a little bit under par. And when our everyday breathing is under par, it absolutely is going to affect the mind. It's going to affect our breathing during physical exercise. It's going to affect our sleep. And overall, we have to bear in mind that the harder and faster we breathe, the less oxygen is delivered throughout the body. So it can affect our overall health.
Yeah, indeed. No, that's a great explanation. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight is that you indicated kind of like that 25-second mark is kind of like a really good kind of like basic, identifier indicator. I know that you've written about too kind of like the 30-second mark, and then more especially too kind of like the hallmark or the gold standard being 40 seconds. Is that still kind of where you're at? Is that like the gold standard would be to find a way to get yourself up to a Bolt score of 40, or have you kind of changed your notion on that?
No, I haven't changed my notion, but I don't want to scare people off either.
Yeah.
It's kind of surprising, even working with elite athletes, that we can see low Bolt scores. And Bolt score, even though it's a really important determinant of breathlessness during physical exercise, an athlete with a low Bolt score is more likely to gas out too soon. They have disproportionate breathlessness. They're wasting too much energy on breathing, because there's an energy cost associated with breathing. So if you have an individual breathing hard and fast and working their breathing muscles excessively, well, that's going to consume oxygen, and this can lead to fatigue. And the respiratory muscles too are prone to fatigue. So really, as human beings, we need to be able to train ourselves to be economical with the breath and to be efficient and to get more out of the breath. So in other words, to do more with less. Now, 40 seconds would be absolutely the goal. And an individual that might be, say, I was working with people there 2 weeks ago, and their Bolt scores were 3 seconds and 5 seconds. And one person was bedbound. So they couldn't get out of bed. They're totally caught for breath. They are under medical supervision. So it's not that I'm kind of saying do breathing exercise and don't go to your doctor. But we were using breathing exercises as a means to help bring some control to their breathing. And, it's always going to give me some feedback there. Now, the 25-second mark was supported by a study by Professor Kyle Kiesel. He's a professor of physical therapy. I think it's from Evansville University in the United States. And he looked at 51 individuals. The average age was 27 years of age. Only 5 of them had normal breathing. And
wow.
I wouldn't never say that, 5 out of 50. So you're talking about 20, what's that? 5 into 51. 20% of my maths right. Having normal breathing, meaning that 80%, sorry, that's 10%.
Yeah, 5 out of 50 is 10%.
90% having abnormal breathing.
Yeah.
Or at least they were failing in some dimension, the biochemical, the biomechanical, or psychophysiological aspects of breathing. So normally I would say that it's about 20% of the normal population having a Bolt score of less than 25 seconds. But I'm going to revise that. It's really, the literature says that 20% of the population have dysfunctional breathing. About 75% of the population with anxiety and panic disorder have dysfunctional breathing.
Yeah.
50% of people with lower back pain, 30% of people with asthma. But if we were to use the marker of dysfunctional breathing as having a Bolt score of 25 seconds or less, we would see that figure climb hugely.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, there's no way, especially with all the people that I've seen, which again, I tend to see a little bit more of a clinical population for the most part. But I was like, man, like the 20% number sounds incredibly low for dysfunctional breathing. But yeah, I think that if you use kind of the proxy of the Bolt score, especially that 25-second mark, you're right. I think that number is going to be significantly inflated. Thanks for listening to the Hanu Health Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. This podcast would not happen without listeners and supporters like you, and the best way to support us and the show is to head on over to iTunes and provide us with a 5-star review. This helps us reach others and spread the good word of breathing and stress resiliency. If we read your 5-star review on air, please reach out to podcast@hanuhealth.com with your name and mailing address, and we will send you some sweet Hanu gear. Until next time, breathe better and stress less.